Emerging from the turmoil of the preceding 50 years and the crises of the 3rd century, Rome found itself in urgent need of a stable recovery period. The empire had been nearly brought to the brink of collapse on multiple fronts, necessitating time to restore its economic and military strength, as well as to rebuild civilian confidence in its capacity to defend its borders. The years 285 to 335 AD would provide a phase of more stable governance and prosperity. This does not imply a complete absence of military engagements along Rome's borders or internal succession conflicts, but these were not as severe as those experienced in the previous 50 years. During this transformative period, a significant change occurred with the adoption of Christianity as the state religion under Constantine. This marked the beginning of a new monotheistic era in the empire's history, moving away from the pagan pantheon of gods that had been integral to Roman life for nearly a millennium. The era commenced with the reign of Diocletian, who ascended to the throne in 284 AD, after deposing his unpopular predecessor, Carinus, who had ruled briefly. Diocletian, like many of his predecessors, was a military leader and came from humble origins. He had experienced the hardships of a soldier's life, rising through the ranks due to merit and the respect of his troops. Almost immediately upon becoming emperor, he set out to confront various Germanic tribal threats, particularly the Alemanni and the Carpi, who were persistently encroaching into Roman territory. Following some successes against these groups, he then turned his attention to the Sarmatians in the Balkans, a nomadic people advancing northwestward, the rapid transition between distinct styles of warfare within Persia illustrates Rome's extensive military experience during this era. Centuries of confronting barbarian and Eastern threats have significantly influenced military strategies and capabilities. Remarkably, the same legions were able to shift from overcoming a predominantly infantry-based Germanic tribal force to engaging a Persian adversary characterized by cavalry, armed with lances and long slashing swords, capable of swift maneuvers across the battlefield. Only 2 years into Diocletian's reign, a noteworthy development occurred that shed light on his character. He appointed a co-emperor, Maximian, to govern the Western Empire, while Diocletian presided over the East. Although co-rulers were not uncommon, establishing such an arrangement early in his reign, particularly one that was not based on familial ties, was unprecedented. This decision, made against the backdrop of his strong position within both the military and society, demonstrated a level of strategic foresight and problem-solving ability that many of his predecessors had lacked, not only in the past 50 years but throughout the broader history of Rome. As Diocletian conducted campaigns in the east and Maximian engaged in battles along the European frontiers, they faced another secession attempt, this time involving Rome's territories in Britain and northern France. Reminiscent of the challenges faced by Pius in the Gallic Empire over 3 decades earlier, the impact of this situation on Diocletian's subsequent decisions remains uncertain. However, in 293 AD, he introduced an innovative governance structure known as the Tetrarchy. Under this system, he retained the title of emperor alongside his co-emperor Maximian, while 2 additional rulers, or Caesars, named Constantius and Galerius, were appointed beneath them. This arrangement aimed to enhance the effectiveness of governance and address regional threats, while also establishing a clear line of succession from the co-emperors, now referred to as brothers, to the 2 younger leaders. The Caesars beneath them were presented as sons, accompanied by extensive administrative reforms executed with a meticulous and bureaucratic methodology. Another significant aspect of Diocletian's reign was his persecution of Christians. This minority religion had faced intermittent suffering under various emperors for over 250 years by this time, with the notorious cruelty of rulers like Nero well documented. However, Diocletian also implemented severe repression beginning around 303 AD, resulting in the burning of churches and scriptures, the arrest of numerous priests, and some being executed in horrific manners. These measures were largely ineffective in eradicating the faith, serving primarily to exclude Christians from roles in state administration for a time. In 305 AD, after a reign exceeding 20 years, Diocletian and his co-emperor, Maximian, abdicated in what was intended to be a smooth transition of power from a ruler who considered himself a stabilizing force for Rome. The previous Caesars, Galerius and Constantius Chlorus, were expected to assume the new roles. However, the tetrarchy was not destined to endure for long. Chlorus soon passed away, and his son Constantine was declared emperor by his father's troops. This development plunged Rome into another era of succession conflict, with numerous claimants to the imperial title between 309 and 313 AD. Nevertheless, most of these threats were neutralized, with a pivotal moment in the consolidation of Constantine's power occurring at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 AD here. Along the banks of the Tiber River, Constantine confronted the forces of Maxentus. The two armies clashed in an open field, resulting in a decisive defeat for Maxentus, who was likely thrown from his horse and drowned in the river. Constantine's forces salvaged his body from a disgraceful end, retrieving it decapitated and subsequently displaying it throughout the streets of Rome. This event not only served as a significant reinforcement of Constantine's authority, but also represented a pivotal moment in the religious evolution of the Roman Empire and Europe for the next millennium. Historian Eusebius recounts that as Constantine advanced toward battle, he experienced a vision of the cross illuminated by the sun, accompanied by the words, "In this sign you shall conquer." The authenticity of this vision, or its potential grounding in natural phenomena, is of little consequence. It signified a turning point in both Constantine's spiritual journey and that of the empire. Within a year following the battle, he the Edict of Milan in 313 AD, which ceased the persecution of Christians and granted them the liberty to practice their faith. Furthermore, he took steps to centralize a previously fragmented and autonomous early church, establishing a precedent for stringent state oversight of religious matters, which would eventually evolve into the powerful structure of the Catholic Church. This development was further solidified by the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, where an accepted canon was established and certain texts were excluded. The discussions also addressed the Arian controversy and strategies for its suppression, foreshadowing the repression that would later befall groups such as the Cathars in France, who deviated from accepted orthodoxy. Although Constantine's reign commenced in 306 AD, he would not achieve complete consolidation of power until 324 AD, thereby concluding the era of Kerr that had existed since he and Licinius had governed alongside each other, with Licinius controlling the eastern segment of the empire. By 323 AD, this situation had changed. Tensions had escalated, leading to the dissolution of their fragile truce, prompting Constantine to pursue the total annihilation of Linus. This conflict included a naval engagement at the same location crossed by Alexander the Great approximately 600 years earlier. Ultimately, Linus was defeated at the Battle of Kaputlos, where both leaders commanded substantial forces, each numbering around 100,000 soldiers. Constantine chose to execute a straightforward and massive frontal assault, which successfully routed Linus's forces. The consequences of this significant confrontation were severe, resulting in losses of up to 30,000 men for Linus and his complete subjugation to Constantine, who would thereafter govern unilaterally for the remainder of his reign. Constantine's lengthy rule concluded in 337 AD, with one of his final acts being his baptism. He had aspired to be baptized in the River Jordan as he prepared for a new campaign in Persia, akin to a crusade, but was hindered by ill health. Since ascending to power in 306 AD, he had navigated a period fraught with challenges. His 31-year reign was remarkably prolonged compared to the tumultuous 3rd century, which witnessed the rise and fall of 20 emperors within 50 years. The combined duration of Diocletian and Constantine's rule was equivalent to that of the preceding century. Upon his death, the Roman Empire had transformed significantly since 285 AD. It now embraced a new state religion, boasted a vast metropolis and eastern power center in Constantinople, and had implemented a modernized taxation and bureaucratic system, largely due to the efforts of both Constantine and Diocletian. Although some succession disputes would arise, governance would ultimately remain within his family until 350 AD. Emperor Constantine established the trajectory of the empire for the remainder of its existence, as well as influencing the future direction of European states that would follow. The centralized Catholic Church, of which he was a significant architect, would serve as the predominant spiritual and social force in the region for over a millennium. His reforms also posed a considerable challenge to Christianity, compelling it to limit its foundational texts and adapt to a centralized authority in a manner that was fundamentally at odds with Scripture. This marked the onset of a complex process in which religion became intertwined with the state and the structures of power.